We should be live. We'll make sure that's actually the case over on Rumble and attempt to correct this camera. Here, kitty, look very cute up close. And now we're fine. Just a moment. Oh, by the way, I should probably pause on the other side. By the way, people are reporting an increase in the number of non-notifications for everything that I'm posting on YouTube, which probably accounts for the fact that the viewership is so much lower today. It could be a site glitch, or it could be, they've hit me with yet another layer of algorithmic throttling. I think that's the fourth or fifth layer that they've got me under, if the latter is the case. So we'll see exactly what happens. I'm just going to continue making my content like always because people enjoy it. And if they don't know that I exist because YouTube never notifies them of that existence, well, there are other better sites that you can use. Links in the description, of course. By the way, pinned at the top if you're watching on YouTube, link to my books blog. You've got another week until Halloween. It's always time to get some stocking stuffers early for all of the occult-minded relatives in your family, or anyone that likes spirituality, folklore, and things like that. We'll be talking about all sorts of shit. By the way, to recession-proof, that Putin story about him going into cardiac arrest appears to be spurious, which is not exactly a surprise. Sort of like the story of him falling down the stairs and pooping himself, which came, I think, was it last spring or winter or thereabouts. It was fun times. It seems like defecation, potty humor, is a big thing in propaganda these days. So the idea is someone is feeble and, they can't hold their bowels in, and so they just shit everywhere. And in cases where the person probably does have that problem, of course, it doesn't apply, like Joe Biden. Anyway, we've got lots of stuff to talk about. In fact, I didn't get my actual tabs open here. A little bit scattershot at the moment because I got distracted by the kitty. She decided that she wanted to come over and have a little bit of a snuggle. Whenever I wear this robe, specifically, it's definitely kitty time. I don't know why she likes it so much. She just decided it was fuzzy and soft and like her. And so she sort of rolls around. She flummoxes like this and semi-pets herself on the robe. Let me get these open really quickly so that I know what I'm actually talking about. I could always use the notepad file, but I like to have the actual links open because sometimes you have to express something verbatim. It can be important for your news topics. My apologies. Also, I'm a little bit full from my late lunch. Of course, eating the French RCIR. Very much better than the average MRE. Military rations are usually edible, but they're not usually much more than that. In France, they get definitely a cut above when it comes to that one. We've got all sorts of stuff to talk about. Let's see. Oh, yes, polling. We're going to talk specifically on the general election polling, and we've only got a few polls, so take these with a grain of salt. There's only 3 of them to actually look at, even though they are relatively recent. This is the general election, Trump versus Biden versus Kennedy versus West, which is the matchup that you actually have, assuming that nobody actually drops back out. You may also get a 5th opponent. You may get a no-labeler. There will, of course, be a Green Party nominee and a Libertarian Party nominee. It's funny. One thing I did want to mention very briefly on this, I'll do this before I get into the news at large. Isn't it odd that Kennedy and West are put in the polling aggregate, at least some of the polling aggregates, when they never do that for third-party candidates that are fully registered? So RFK Jr. gets a slot, Cornel West gets a slot, but the Libertarian candidate, they never mentioned them existing at all. Same with the Green Party candidate. Little bit interesting now, isn't it? So we'll talk about those numbers and my thoughts about them, because that's fairly important, because that is the actual matchup that you have. It's not just Trump v. Biden. It actually looks better for Trump when there are other people in the race, which is the exact opposite of what many people, including a few of you, told me when RFK Jr. first made his decision to go independent in the wake of his internal polling there. We've got the House speakership dust-up. That's an important one. Mike Johnson versus, it appears, Kevin McCarthy plus Jim Jordan. And it's not entirely clear whose cockamamie proposal that was. We'll be talking about that because, I mean, again, prediction fulfilled. Clankdom, you can clank along if you want to. Prediction fulfilled. While Matt Gaetz may have been ideologically sound in his move to remove Kevin McCarthy, it did lead to chaos, and it's being seized upon by people, of course, who don't like the GOP. Mainly, they just don't like Trump, And so they're blaming him for what's happening in a GOP House that's been dysfunctional since long before Trump arrived. I noticed that one as well. We've got an article here. Israel strikes Syrian army assets after rocket launches, Israeli military says. So more mission creep again there. There have been strikes across the border into Lebanon, actually, because of Hezbollah. And they enjoy bombing Israelis. They have for a number of decades, you'll know. But now this is Syria. So now there's action actually across that border as well. It risks spiraling into a much larger regional conflict. And other things to talk about. Berkeley Walker wants to revamp photosynthesis for a changing climate. That's a bad idea. We'll talk about exactly why. And we won't even have to, well, we'll probably mention Jurassic Park a few times anyway. Let's just face it. Also, the ACLU. I bumped the story about Nikki Haley because I was like, well, she's in third place for the most part. Clearly, Trump is already basically the nominee. We'll be talking about that polling for the general election, actually, as our main video, because the primaries are fundamentally over. Donald Trump has won the nomination for the GOP. So instead, I decided to talk about the ACLU. I archived it, and it's fucking hilarious about them suing the state of Tennessee. You'll hear why on this live stream. It's a doozy. And then Bitcoin, of course, surging the other day, and it's still rising, I think, now. I checked my portfolio earlier. I was happy about that. Definitely happy about the gaining a little bit of extra money. Bitcoin on the rise again, actually at a multi-year high at the moment. That's partially because of an ETF being launched. I think it was that was BlackRock's proposal. And they wanted to have an ETF, so that's dragging the market upwards. So yeah, let's get right into it after we get to this super chat, of course. Sounder Siren 07. Does it matter if Trump wins, as the Democrats will retake the House and keep the Senate? Just really frustrated. I don't know that they'll keep the Senate. That map looks more forgiving. As far as the House, yeah, the Democrats will probably retake the House of Representatives, but it's not certain. If I look at the congressional polling, actually, that matchup is a lot closer than I would expect. I would expect the Republicans to be 5 points behind. They're actually about breaking even. It's going to be a close House, I think, either way. They could maintain it. It's just, you know, if they only maintain it by 2 or 3 seats, it doesn't really matter, as we're seeing with the House Republicans and their particular dysfunction. The Senate, though, looks more likely to actually go GOP than for the Dems to keep it. We'll get more polling on that, I'm sure, closer to the election. You got to realize the primaries technically haven't even begun yet. We're in the prelude to the primaries. There hasn't been a vote cast there other than, you know, some expanded mail-in ballots. Ramon C. GTC, the French MRE, looks awesome. It was pretty good. And I still got one more meal in that, including with the Thai soup and the duck pate, which I don't think I've ever actually had before. I may have had it in the, I can't remember, the Czech MRE had that. I think that had pork pate, if I remember correctly. I don't think it was duck. So supposedly gourmet. I've got some of those cereal crackers to go along with it. We'll see what happens. Probably all right. I don't know if it'll be as good as that the tuna ginger there. It'd be hard to beat that one, other than inconsistency. And again, I think my mistake was I didn't heat it up, and so it was more condensed. Although, again, I'm not going to eat a tuna salad heated up because that's just weird. Or at least it is, like, in my opinion. Anyway, we'll get into some polling really quickly here. We have 3 fairly contemporary general election polls here that reflect the actual reality of the general election race. Donald Trump versus Joe Biden and RFK Jr. and Cornel West. Those are the 4 candidates that you've got in there. You're going to have other people that are like on the ballot in their home state. Some eccentric millionaire just decided to run in a write-in campaign. You'll have a Libertarian and a Green Party candidate who won't even be spoken of in the legacy media. So, and I say this as a classical liberal who leans towards the Libertarian Party in some ways. It's basically an afterthought. Nobody's going to be talking about it. Meanwhile, the legacy media, I think, is making a mistake here. They're playing up RFK Jr. because they believed the internal polls that showed him taking more votes from Trump than from Joe Biden. I think they're probably already beginning to regret it. We have 3 polls here. Harris, and that ended on the 19th. That showed Trump at +7, so he's comfortably ahead in that poll. USA Today ending on the 20th showed a tie. So again, roughly in line with where he's polling if it's just Trump v. Biden. In that, I think he's a little bit less than a point ahead. So it's well within the margin of error. The newest comes from Messenger, ending on the 23rd. That shows Trump 2 points ahead. In the aggregate, now this is only 3 polls, so take it or leave it. We're not sure that that's necessarily going to be accurate. Trump's actually 3 points ahead in the matchup that's actually real. If that holds true and Donald Trump ends up coming out 2 or 3 points ahead, and it wouldn't be unexpected, he will win re-election. In 2020, he supposedly, Hong Kong, lost by a couple 100,000 votes. He was 7 points down in the aggregate, and the final result had him down by about 4. In 2016, when he won against Hillary Clinton, again, by a relatively small margin in a relatively small number of states, he was barely ahead in any polling during any period. He was doing better than in 2020, certainly, but he was still about 4 points behind. That narrowed on election day some, but he still came in behind Hillary Clinton. If, therefore, this polling is remotely true, and this would be a beyond the margin of error sort of gap, if you're comparing it to the +7 for Biden in 2020, Donald Trump would win re-election. And the reason why, I think, is that a lot of the so-called Trump voters flocking to RFK Jr. are the ones that voted for Joe Biden in 2020 anyway. So Union Dems. Cornel West picking away even a small portion of the far left, as he appears to be doing. And again, if he's running at 3 or 4 points, that's still quite a few voters. And some of them are in like the college towns in places like Minnesota and Pennsylvania. It's not all Californians and New Yorkers. If you factor that into the race and Trump ends up at +3 on election day, it would be very, very difficult for him to lose. It's possible, but I mean, I would stake my claim on Trump probably winning re-election. Yeah, we could talk about UFC, but I don't care about it. They've re-endorsed Bud Light, I guess. That's now the beer of the UFC. I guarantee that UFC fighters don't drink a whole lot of empty carbs, though. I think they're too busy packing the protein. I think they're eating cottage cheese and steak dinners more than they're drinking beer. Could be wrong. I'm sure some of them have a soft spot for alcohol once in a while, but I don't think it's part of their regular diet. Sir Link, I want Congress to be dysfunctional right now. If they can't hold votes, then no declaration of war. It's not like an impeachment would go now anyway. The problem is you don't need to declare war in order for war to happen. All you have to do is say that there's a conflict that you're interested in, and U.S. troops got attacked, which, they actually have been and inevitably will be more. And you can gull people into allowing you to use force. Ozzy's Robots. Morning. I noticed an increase in Iranian atrocity stories, like a girl beaten brain dead. I saw that one. Reminds me of the Iraq baby incubator story. Ramp up the warmongering just in time for 24. P.S. Go Bitcoin. Yeah, I have noticed that. The baby incubator story from when Iraq attacked Kuwait, I believe it was. I brought that up last week in the context of some of the things that we were beginning to see, beheaded babies and stuff like that. Rinse and repeat. The public can always be brought into line as long as you say that babies were harmed in some way. If the enemy's doing anything wrong to babies, then automatically they're the bad guys, even if there are babies dying on that side as well. And then when someone points out the specific story is wrong, that it didn't happen, you say, well, but they were killing babies anyway, so it doesn't really matter. They will give the propaganda a pass even when they're being lied to blatantly. They'll actually lick the boot on the issue. This has happened before, and this is not my first rodeo, unfortunately, with regards to war coverage. Sir Link, well, then the very least, no new laws or taxes. Oh, don't worry, they'll be able to pull it together in order to make sure that new onerous, burdensome regulations and taxes exist. On that, the two parties agree completely, so it doesn't really matter. This is just, they're trying to figure out who's going to be the next whipping boy for the Freedom Caucus more than anything else. Yeah, it's yet another day, another example of about the same number of people watching on Rumble, even though the overall audience is much smaller. And that's because YouTube is definitely throttling me more. I don't know whether that's mainly glitch related or whether it's going to be like a long-term thing, but there's a reason why the Rumble Award and the BitChute Award are back there, and the YouTube play button is like, And if I ship it, the glass pane on the front might break, but also, I'm certainly not going to get the gold award anytime soon. So on other sites, you actually have a chance to be heard. YouTube hates me quite clearly. It's been that way for several years, actually. Next news story, speaking of the Speaker fight. In latest House Speaker update, Republicans nominate Mike Johnson to lead. What you missed from the USA Today. Well, you didn't really miss much because they're slow walking the whole process. They keep holding votes, and inevitably, they know that they're not going to get the votes, but they hold it anyway because they're just batshit. There is a counterpart to this, though, as far as this goes. We could see Mike Johnson end up becoming Speaker of the House. He does appear to have some support between both Uniparty and Freedom Caucus. The Republicans don't need the Dems to vote with them. The Dems aren't going to vote in favor of a House Speaker that's Republican anyway. They've made that clear, which is why it's funny when the Unipartyists blame like Matt Gaetz over this whole issue. It's like, well, the Dems aren't going to support any speaker or work with them just because they've got an R after their name. So it doesn't really matter if it's Kevin McCarthy. He was a Trump endorsee, by the way. I thought Orange Man bad. Here's the problem. I talked about this when it first happened weeks ago. When Matt Gaetz effectively pulled the trigger and decided to call for a floor vote that some people thought wouldn't go through, and it was very, very narrow, and effectively worked with the Dems to oust Kevin McCarthy. I pointed out, and I'll point it out again, ideologically, there's no problem with the maneuver. Kevin McCarthy made a number of promises to the Freedom Caucus members, some of which he followed through with. To his credit, some of them he followed through with very quickly. There were others that he either apparently didn't intend to follow through with or was dragging his feet on. For instance, it took a very long time to convene an impeachment inquiry, even though they had the ability to do it on day one. He wanted to be very slow and go down the strategy route. And the problem is he Boehnered himself. Ideologically, therefore, I sided with Matt Gaetz. No problem with it. The idea of removing McCarthy, that's perfectly fine. There's no problem with that. But I warned, and I think that history has already shown that I was completely right, and I wasn't the only one that guessed this, that it would cause absolute chaos in the U.S. House of Representatives among the GOP if that happened. Gaetz, if Gaetz had lost, probably he immediately would have left. Along with anyone else that sided with the Dems to try to oust him. McCarthy would make their lives living hell. They'd have to resign. But he succeeded, again, narrowly. And the problem is that the cure may be worse than the disease. Kevin McCarthy's not doing his job, but now you're fundamentally incapable of maybe minting a new Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson's a possibility. This is the fourth person they've gone through. The other plan is even more hilarious. That's to get Kevin McCarthy back in there, but have Jim Jordan as a co-speaker. So you'd effectively have two speakers of the House. It's just that Jim Jordan, the one that the Freedom Caucusers mainly wanted, he would be the second in command, so to speak. He'd be the assistant speaker of the House. I don't know that you have the votes for that. I'm not sure, number one, the Freedom Caucus would be willing to subjugate Jordan to McCarthy, especially when they already kicked McCarthy to the curb. Certainly the ones that voted to remove McCarthy would be reluctant to do that. And I'm not sure that some of the Unipartyists would want Jim Jordan to even be co-speaker. So that might not go through. Mike Johnson may be a better chance than that rather convoluted scheme. It does seem that he's tolerable to both sides of the GOP. We'll see exactly what happens when they vote later. I think literally today on that. Until then, you have nothing but chaos, though, dysfunction within the U.S. House of Representatives. Even more so than you get with the Democrats. Normally, the Democrats have been the schismatic party for a number of years. Now the Republicans are beginning to crack. I find it funny. I mean, they kind of deserve it. Speaking as a non-Republican, I don't really care if they are given enough rope to hang themselves. But that being said, there are actually things that Congress does need to do. There are actually bills to vote on that are meaningful and important to consider. It's just not often, but they do actually occur. And we're on the precipice of World War III. It would be kind of nice to have a Speaker of the House at such a time. Even if they're not necessarily perfect, like even having like Kevin McCarthy in there would arguably be better than the chaos that ensued. Ideologically, I side with the Freedom Caucusers. Ideologically, I supported Matt Gaetz, and I made that clear. But there is definitely a price to pay for having done what he did. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen at this point. It basically depends on this round of voting. Most of the others that are in the mix potentially as House Speaker that have thrown their hat in the ring and said, consider me, are like non-entities. They probably don't get voted through. Keep in mind, I don't think it doesn't even have to be a member of the House. It's just that the idea of like Trump as Speaker or something, that's obviously not going to happen. King of Biltong over on Rumble. Good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Get your Biltong shipped free using code STICKS on www.landofbiltong.com and www.antonsusa.com. We would like to thank everyone for the support you have shown. #ClankNation. It is some good stuff. I would strongly recommend, if you're in the United States, considering purchasing a couple of their items. I will vouch for the bison and for the Japanese Wagyu. They are both fucking delicious. Also, apparently Anton working on extra spicy ghost pepper biltong, which I don't know that you have any major competitors for, actually, which is strange because you'd think that, I mean, that like a country fair or something like that, that thing would sell out in 10 minutes, probably. Everyone would want to try it. My second nephew. This is a Coffee and Sticks AM. Good morning. Oh, I very much agree. This is still some of that MRE coffee, well, RCIR from the French ration. It's really good. No acidity at all. Great flavor. It's just, again, having no creamer in the MRE when you have coffee in there. Maybe you could change that. Just saying. Ian, Trump just now suggested to support Johnson. A whim. Yeah, I think he had suggested that earlier as well, if I remember correctly. I think that was actually a couple of hours ago that he suggested that. Aquafan, chaos in House is good. My approval of both House and Gates have gone up since no speaker. I want government at a standstill. You may get that. I mean, yeah, it makes 4 and 8 a little bit more difficult, which I guess is a good thing at this point. Hopefully we can avoid. Imagine the U.S. House GOP members managed to prevent World War III because they can't get their shit together. That could be the plot of a good comedy movie, political comedy, I suppose. Unfortunately, I think that they'll manage to, I mean, certainly when Israel is one of the nations in question, they'll definitely be able to find the money for that. You'll see them literally like checking the coin returns in vending machines in order to scrape together the money for their best friend. Sir Link, why USA Christians worship Israel? Have they not read their Bible or the Talmud? Orthodox Jews don't like them. There's videos spitting on Christians in Israel just a few weeks prior to the war. That does actually happen. I would point out that that is mainly like the neocon era fire and brimstone Christians that are in that particular category. It's not all Christians, which is some people thought I was saying that a couple of days ago. They actually dragged me for that. That wasn't what I meant. What I mean is that there is a conglomerate of Christians, self-professed anyway, in the United States specifically, and Canada and a few other nations to an extent, that really do have a big hard-on for the idea of the Jewish state, the Holy Land, and they don't seem to understand exactly anything about Judaism. They certainly don't understand the difference between politics and religion. They seem to think that they're the same thing. Ozzy's Robots. Have you ever tried Italian MREs? No, I have not been able to do that yet. I will definitely have to get one, though, because it's the one MRE that is considered the best generally, like even better than the French one. So I'm like, if the French one is this good, the Italian one's going to be absolutely fucking decadent. I think there was one Steve ate once, and it had like some sort of squid dish in it, actually. It had like weird, like, and I like that, or octopus or something like that. MREs are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them other than if you eat them repeatedly, you get constipated, or, you know, salt intake certainly would be a little bit on the high side. Some of them are majorly over-sugared, by the way. The fact that U.S. MREs appear to be more sugary than the stuff made by the French is probably a testament to us needing to redesign the components a little bit, by the way. Next news story. Israel strikes Syrian army assets after rocket launches, Israeli military says. Yeah, wonderful. Israel launched airstrikes on military infrastructure in Syria in response to rocket launches from Syria towards Israel, according to their army. The Israeli strikes have impacted Syria's 2 main airports and caused the grounding of flights. And so we have yet another step towards regional war here. We now have cross-border issues with Egypt. Of course, Egypt blamed Israel for the Rafah crossing being closed. They said the IDF had targeted the region, so they weren't able to open it. And so that's one. Lebanon, but that's Hezbollah. That's more normal. Israel's done that many times before. And now Syria as well has had its assets struck. The problem is that the longer that this goes on, the more of a likelihood of a snafu sort of situation in which some sort of large-scale attack occurs, in which there's enough casualties that other nations get involved. And I think the United States kind of wants that. The Biden administration wants U.S. troops to come under fire, and they have actually outside of that general region in Iraq and elsewhere over the last weeks. But they want a major event so they can justify getting directly involved. What's better for your re-election chances than being a wartime president and scaring everyone? Well, come on, man. If you change ships in the middle of the ocean, it'll be a big problem. World War III will culminate. They'll be good. They'll literally revert back to the 2016 sort of playbook and say that Trump's going to start the Third World War. He'll abandon Israel inexplicably or arm terrorists or something. He's soft on Iran because he didn't want to haul off and preemptively attack them like Milley suggested that they do at one point. Again, true story. That's the allegation. The allegation is that Donald Trump already said no to World War III. Can you fucking imagine why someone as war-averse as me would want to reelect him? As opposed to Joe Biden, the aging vegetable? He's not even in charge. I can't even blame him for the things that are happening directly. Other people are the ones calling the shots. Jormangan. So Israel is planning on gassing the tunnels now. The irony. Where does that source come from? You're not the first person who's brought that up. Several people have mentioned that to me, and I've seen other people posting on Twitter especially. Apparently, there's some sort of idea by Israel that they're going to pump poisonous gas into the Hamas tunnel network in order to asphyxiate them. Can somebody please DM me on Twitter with a legitimate source for this claim? Because I haven't seen anything from any reporting, and I don't just pay attention to the legacy media. I use a bunch of aggregates and shit like that. I mean, this comes from Ground News, which, by the way, a Clanker linked me to, I think on Monday or last weekend. And thank you for that. It even shows the bias of the sites that are doing the reporting. So it's very, very useful. And RCP and stuff like that, and using 4chan, I haven't seen any posts about it that had any link of any worth. So, I mean, if that's true, it is fairly ironic. We're going to gas out the tunnels. Nobody will make jokes about this. Wow, love me country. Fuck the forever war. Fuck Biden. MAGA. I want to read that in the British accent. Love me country. Fuck the forever war. Fuck Biden. MAGA. Can't really say MAGA. How would a British person say MAGA? MAGA would be more like Australian, I think. I don't know. I'm just sort of mouthing off at the moment. But no, yeah, gassing the tunnels, I think, would be a problem, especially since you realize they might have hostages down there. Probably all of them are down in the tunnel network. They're probably not above ground. Maybe some unintended casualties, but then they can always come out and say that the Hamas members killed them, I suppose. So probably don't care. These robots. I honestly think if Biden drags us into a war, it will spectacularly backfire with respect to the 24, especially since leftoids are siding with Palestine. That may be true, but once you get into a war, extracting yourself is difficult. And then Trump comes in and he has to reluctantly be a wartime president. He can't withdraw right away because then, of course, he hates the Jews. And clearly this is proof that he's a Nazi and stuff like that. People would crucify and castigate him for that. If you slow walk it, it's a very difficult, tenuous process. And of course, keep in mind, Donald Trump is not going to have the goodwill of everyone in his administration. You will see the same thing like you saw with the Syrian envoy who lied about troop totals, blatantly violating the Constitution in so doing and not properly reporting to his own commander-in-chief at the time. Jormangan, redacted, covered it from IDF rep on Fox News interview yesterday. Yeah, if you can, if you or somebody else can link me on Twitter to a link to that, to an article, a video clip, or anything like that, I'd be very much interested in seeing it. Gassing the Hamas tunnels. Yeah, again, that wouldn't ideologically backfire at all. I mean, it would work, I guess, until they realize that they can literally just get out of the tunnels. Not a banned account. Will we arrest MAGA extremists before they offend? That seems to be something that they want to do. You know, you look at the state of Florida as well. There's a lot of political persecution going on right now. Wow. To be fair, I'd give Trump a good shot at stopping the war. Yeah, the problem is they clearly want to start it before the election. Part of the reason being it makes it easier to get reelected when the public's scared. Oh my God, we're at war with Hamas. We're at war with Hezbollah. Terrorists are going to attack you. So you got to vote for us. Stay in line, sheep. Be very afraid. Your suburban or small town community is probably going to come under attack from Hamas if you deviate from our instructions in any way. By the way, give us your AR-15 because, you know, we'll defend you. The cops will show up. Hamas shows up at your house, and then the cops will show up 15 minutes later. I'm sure you'll be fine. Yeah. Mike Oglesby, spray LSD in there. There have actually been active plans by the U.S. and other militaries to create explosives and chemical agents of that sort, like a bomb that drugs the enemy. They had what's called the gay bomb, the idea of a massive, like, spiking of pheromones and libido enhancers, I guess, combined would make the enemy basically just start fucking indiscriminately or something, like a sex bomb, literally. I'm like, you know, that's something that Ike Turner would develop, I suppose, back in the disco era. Just a second here. Oh, yeah. Swamp Donkey. All those Christians and Jews that have the we must defend Israel attitude, we should deport and force them to fight for the IDF, like Ben Shapiro should be deported, along with any Hamas supporter. I think they should have their right to speak freely. I just think that it's an unhelpful thing that they're saying. I don't support Hamas. I don't support Israel. I don't support Palestine. I don't support anyone in the region. You think they'd support me? If shit hits the fan in the United States, am I going to get a bunch of TikTok Palestinians or a bunch of Israeli YouTube channels talking about how they need to send, food aid to me? They're going to send me MREs or something to keep me alive? I don't think so. Sean 487. We have heard here that Iran has taken the bait and directly attacked U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria. That is the report we are hearing. Not sure if true. I'm seeing a lot of propaganda about that. I'm not sure whether it's true. Not a banned account. Will the U.S. take in Kekistani refugees in this crisis? It should. Yeah, Kekistan should have become an actual state. Like, there's plenty of marginal land in the world. Sahara Desert or, Borneo or something. I already read that one. Derp. Sometimes I lose my spot over here. And this is after Rumble, by the way, has updated the way in which its chatting system works. So it was worse before. They've definitely improved it. Next news story. Berkeley Walker wants to revamp photosynthesis for a changing climate. Boosting plants' efficiency could help feed people, especially as the planet warms. You are fundamentally correct, but that's fundamentally a bad idea to engineer plants genetically through artificial or maybe natural means, plant breeding or something, to fool around with their metabolic processes. That's not a good idea for a reason. If you've studied biology and paleontology and things related, you are led to understand that the amount of energy in a system has something to do with, if more energy is available, your metabolic rate can be higher, basically. This is what led to like the sauropods, dinosaurs that were 30, 40 feet tall, etc. There's plenty of energy, there's plenty of humidity and so forth. The conditions were right for having very large creatures roaming the earth. It was physically possible. If a bunch of brontosauruses, I know I'm using an archaic term, by the way, that was retired in the 90s, apatosauruses actually, or ichthyosaurs or triceratops or stegosaurs or something, if they were wandering the world today, they would struggle to meet the caloric intake that they required to continue surviving. It would be very, very difficult for them. If you had large carnivores attendant, it would be even harder for them because the herbivores would be having trouble actually like reproducing and surviving long enough to be predated or scavenged upon. Creating, therefore, plants that are additionally photosynthetic would be great for making plants more efficient in the agricultural sense. The problem is that you're not sure that that CO2 supply that you need for the photosynthesis is not going to continue to become more limited. The fact is that the CO2 level in the atmosphere on Earth right now is not very high. It's fairly low. The idea that the Earth is going to warm out of control and be nothing but carbon dioxide and we're on an irreversible course is wrong. Plants will already be, because CO2 tends to already be the limiter, there's no need for them to be able to undergo additional photosynthesis. The problem is that this is a non-issue that he's addressing here. Plants are already possible in their current state of making use of additional CO2. Have you heard of CO2 pumps in greenhouses? There are people who will hook up a generator and they will vent the carbon dioxide into the greenhouse. You can, by the way, do this yourself. I don't know if I would dare to use one though, because I'd be afraid like if the gas relief valve fails or the ventilation system fails, wouldn't you fill it with asphyxiating gas and you wander in there and all of a sudden you feel lightheaded, pass out and die? Yeah, I don't think I'd be willing to do that. I'll just breathe on the plants a little bit more. I figured that's enough. Put some animals in there to breathe out CO2. They pump the greenhouse or a component in the greenhouse with CO2 to raise the level. All of a sudden, the plants get a lot bigger. That's because CO2 is the main limiting resource. You've always been told it was water or sunlight. Nope, it's actually CO2. Assuming that the plant is getting adequate nutrition, it's in an adequate stratum, etc., adequate fluid, and so forth, CO2 is the main limiter. It's just less important than the other ones. Of course, the plant can survive with normal atmospheric CO2 and normal amounts of water. You can reduce the CO2 more than you can reduce the water level before the plant fucking croaks. CO2 is a limiter for plants. They can already photosynthesize at a considerably greater rate than they do in nature, absent, again, a CO2 pump or something. So, you wait 1,000 years and the CO2 level would be kind of commensurate with what you already get in a high-end greenhouse. There's no reason to change the photosynthesis rate through microbiology. There's no reason to use gene editing to make the chlorophyll more efficient or have more chloroplasts or anything like that. It's completely it's completely off the chain. It sounds good on paper until you actually consider current technology that already accounts for these things. So I thought that I would point that out again. As I've studied plant biology, I've studied ecology, I've certainly done a lot of gardening and so forth. I've looked into greenhouses and all of the various technology that you can put in them, vents and CO2 pumps and so forth. This would be completely ridiculous. There'd be no point to it. It literally does not matter. Trying to change the way in which plants break down materials in order to make ATP makes absolutely no sense when you can already just rely upon very slightly higher amounts of CO2 in the atmosphere as the population increases. And of course, when people burn more fuel and stuff, leading to greater plant growth. It already is. Plant growth is probably a few points higher than it was 100 years ago. It's not a particularly noticeable trend, but it's there. There's more CO2. There's plenty of humidity. As the sea level rises, there's going to be even more of it. The problem takes care of itself. It actually leads to a more lush and green world. Just something that, a lot of people think that that's a Neanderthal statement by people who are scientifically inept and don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and they're all a bunch of creationists, but it's actually true. Send Ben Shapiro over here. He belongs here anyways. OMG puppies. Oh, my camera decided to fuck itself under the wheels of a bus again. OMG puppies. Interesting Twitter space with Vivek, Musk, and David Sachs yesterday. We are slow walking to World War III, Musk said. Possibly. I hope it doesn't happen. Deus Flex. I find it ironic that part of the Palestinian national identity was invented by Western imperial mandates, first the Romans and ultimately by the British. Largely true, by the way. Yeah, we need to get Brondo for the plants. That's all we need. Suck duck. Go gadget. Below 0.2% carbon in the atmo, plants start spontaneously dying. Yeah, we're on the lower end as far, historically speaking, we're on the lower end as far as carbon dioxide. If anything, we should buy more SUVs. Aussie's Robots. Speaking of plants, I discovered Bill Gates owns many potato farms that supply McDonald's potatoes for fries. One more reason not to eat there. Made a video about that 2 days ago. I'm not sure it ever processed on Rumble, though. It doesn't show any statistics or anything like that. It's up, but I don't know if it's actually viewable. It's on BitChute, though, and I think Odyssey. Stuybeck B, finally managed to escape my comfort zone, and I'm hitting the gym. Already lost 15 kilo, and you have a small part in this. Keep clanking. Good for you. That's the way to do it. You know, get in shape, eat some good food, learn a new skill. I mean, you'll feel better anyway. There's direct positive impacts on your life from self-improvement as well. It's not always possible to do everything under the sun. Sometimes I think people get like depressed because they're like, well, I'll never look like that. I can never make that much money. Or saying, okay, but you can make marginal improvements. Those alone are enough. That's why you should take that initiative. By the way, I think that the cat is gassy right now because I may have eaten chili con carne yesterday, but I know that's not coming from me. Look at her guilty face. Jesus. Oh, God, she stinks. Mulgera 80. I can't even deal with this. You smell like an outhouse. Holy shit. You smell worse than the baby. Mulgera 85. Morning, Sticks. Can I get a shout out for my favorite border hopper, Bird? Shout out for Bird, I guess. Sean 47. Guess the war is on. NBC, Australian, Canada, British, Newsmax, etc. now show a video of Iran attacking and killing and wounding 24 soldiers. Iran is fucked. Yeah, well, that could be it. Let's hope that this is mainly bullshit news, and it's like the beheaded baby story, and then it gets quickly buried when it's found not to be true. Baba Yaga, new crusades when Deus Vult, Islam should be driven from the West. Well, I mean, replace it with what? Hardline Christianity? For a pagan occultist like me, I don't know if that's hugely better. I mean, unless you're a gay one, then I guess the Christians, ostracize you, but don't throw you off a building, I guess. OMG puppies, plants and clouds reflecting sunlight limit warming and CO2. Negative feedback, ice reflecting sunlight accelerates cooling. Positive feedback, the risk of geoengineering is out of control cooling. I actually agree with this. Rockstar Podcast, holla! Yeah, so some people are claiming that Iran has been shown to have attacked U.S. troops in the most explicit sense. Be a mistake by the Iranians. You are poking the bear. Swamp Donkey, Emperor Hadrian did nothing wrong. He is the rightful owner of Syria, Palestinia. I like Diocletian. He left and said, fuck it, and then decided to go grow cabbages. By the way, the ACLU, I'm just going to read their post, and then you can tell me what's wrong with it in the comments section. ACLU the other day. Breaking. We're suing Tennessee for their aggravated prostitution statute that targets people with HIV with harsh punishment and lifetime sex offender registration. This law is unconstitutional and disproportionately affects Black and transgender women. What is the ACLU fundamentally saying with this tweet? Disproportionately affects. So you mean that it's more likely that a person of certain types is more likely to have AIDS? That is not a really great position to take for the ACLU. They're getting called out, by the way, by some leftists on this one. They're like, what the fuck are you talking about? How dare you insinuate that a Black person who's doing that would be more likely to have some communicable illness because, you're being racially discriminatory. This comes in on the heels, of course, last year of California decriminalizing giving someone AIDS knowingly. The idea is that with prophylaxis, there's a low rate of transmission from a person with AIDS to a person without it. The problem is the law doesn't even mention prophylaxis. Person with full-blown AIDS, fucking 90 pounds and covered in sores, can go and whore themselves out and never get in any trouble. The idea that it shouldn't be an aggravation of the crime. I don't even think prostitution should be a crime. It's unfortunate. But as a libertarian or libertarian leaning, I don't know what you'd call me now. If a person wants to fuck for money, that's not that different from a wink nod girlfriend or certain friends with benefits arrangements that are totally legal. You're sleeping with me and I'm giving you dinner. And then I paid for your gas and stuff like that. Yeah, here, you need food for your kids or something. Here's $100. Well, that's not under prostitution ordinances. It's legal. Isn't it kind of the same thing, though? Other than the fact that it's only explicitly the sex and not the food that you're paying for if it's a prostitute. So I don't believe in illegalizing prostitution. Here in the Netherlands, for example, prostitution, things of that nature, are legal. They're regulated, but it's a weird subject. I already talked about how I don't like the red light district sort of thing, and sex tourism is a problem. It is usurious. You get some 20-year-old woman from Eastern Europe in there and is being basically used as a piece of meat, and I find that to be very sad. But I don't believe in prosecuting someone for thinking that they need to sell their body for money. And going after the Johns doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because then the clientele, they get fined and they have less money to supply the prostitutes with cash. And there's a lot of drug use and stuff. It's very sad, but I think it should be fundamentally legal. That being said, if you have, that you have a disease, it's not treatable. It can be deadly without the regular use of drugs that have significant side effects in many cases. Yes, absolutely, you should aggravate the criminal penalty. Should be a fucking felony. It should not just aggravated crime. It should be, clearly there's something seriously wrong with you. So we force you to get a tattoo on your junk that warns the potential clientele, hey, you probably shouldn't stick it in here. That would probably be a little bit more fruitful. Unfortunately, the ACLU completely disagrees and thinks, hey, if you give someone AIDS, that's part of a protected category. By the way, in their follow-up tweets, they literally say that. In their follow-up tweets, they're like, well, people with AIDS is a protected category, and so you're not allowed to do this. I would disagree. I think that takes the idea of protected category to a very, very illogical, stretched extent. But again, the ACLU also refuses to defend anyone whose civil rights are violated in the commission of them using a firearm in any way. They made this clear about 5 years ago, so we're not necessarily dealing with the best and brightest. Scarfy the Strange. My dad thinks Trump started the slow walk to World War III and even blames Hamas attacks on Trump. TDS has taken my dad from me. You might be able to talk some sense into him, though. Just remember not to just launch off into insults and claim ignorance or something like that. That's a common mistake people make. I've seen that too, unfortunately. Yeah, Trump did the Hamas attacks because of Afghanistan or something. Just educate him on Pashtun culture and see how he reacts. The importance of sticking to your agreements in Central Asia is a very high one. Apache. U.S. politicians should be blamed for any American deaths in the Middle East more than Iran or Hamas. Also, what did the ACLU mean by this? Exactly. I think that we can all figure out what they mean. That's the problem. Their optics are terrible. The Grizzly, what do you think the odds are that Trump wins in 24? I would say at the moment 80%. If so, what do you think that does for populism as a movement in the U.S.? It boosts it massively. Although Trump will be continuing to be obstructed and legally persecuted even if he wins. You can mark my words on that. If he loses, I mean, we still have a chance, but we've missed out on our best chance to flip the bird to the entire establishment as a vote of no confidence. So I'll be voting Trump. And I don't care if he's in a jail cell at the time. He'll still get my vote. Zipperl, good health upon you and your family. Thank you, and yours as well. Robot Trucker, AIDS stands for, I can't say that on YouTube. I believe that would be labeled hate speech. I know the acronym, though. There's nothing new under the sun that I haven't seen as far as that goes. Sensei Ryu, good morning, Sticks. Can Israel exist with Gaza anymore? They seem to want to annex part of it to create a security zone, like a buffer zone. What form that takes is anyone's guess. Sinister Minister, when AOC plays Dungeons and Dragons, she always gets killed by a +5 fart. Interesting. Never played Dungeons and Dragons. For some reason, a lot of people think that I have. Deus Flex, say what you will about Muslims. They know how to reproduce and are demographically healthy. If you're a tradcon worried about cultural replacement, the answer is simple. Have kids. I've tried to say that to people that are like, whitest nationalists. They go around talking about white nationalistic things. You say, well, there's one way in which you can preserve the homeland for the white race or, whatever the moniker is. They ask, what is it? And you say, well, have a bunch of white kids. Oh, no, that's unrealistic. No, it's much more realistic that we're going to round people up into gulags. Something like that. I've sparred with them so many times. They get so upset because they don't like it when, and so then they resort to, well, like you're dysgenic, or like you're not one of us, so your opinion doesn't matter, even if your opinion is completely correct. And I find it funny. Ashley, only reason escorting is illegal is because it's non-taxable. You can raise GDP with dinner dates, movie viewings, and other activities. Yeah, exactly. And there is, by the way, a huge differential between the streetwalker and the escort with the way the law is regarded. I've seen people who clearly were out with escorts in Rutland and in the United States in general. That's normally not policed whatsoever. Streetwalker, that's policed. Mainly, it's a shakedown sort of thing. You can't make sex illegal. I mean, you can protect kids or prevent animals from being raped. There's no real way to stop it between adults anyway. So why make it illegal? It just doesn't make any fucking sense. You're right, though. It mainly is about the money more than it. Money and control by the government. And then the final news story of the day, Bitcoin surges to 16-month $35,000 high as BlackRock ETF prepares to launch. Now, some people are saying it's a fluke. Others are saying that it's going to sky fucking rocket, that this is the last nail in the coffin, so to speak, of the old guard mentality of the economy, and this is the next big breakthrough. If it is, it's going to be a big breakthrough. Disclaimer, I'm not giving you any financial advice in this or any other section of this live stream. I'm going to give you just my own opinion. I hold a reasonable amount of Bitcoin. It's currently valued at like 25 grand or thereabouts. So it's decent. It's not like a major investment in the sense of like having a mansion or something, but it's a decent chunk of money. It's a decent one. And so I benefit if Bitcoin rises directly. And I traded out most of the other crypto that I had for Bitcoin some time ago. I just wanted to compact it to make things easier. And I'm like, they tend to tack up and down together. This is the one with the notoriety, the original gangsta of crypto. It just sort of makes more sense to bet on that one. Again, just my opinion, it makes more sense to bet on that one than some meme coin or something. I do hold a small amount of other crypto, but it's an underwhelming amount. So my hope is that the pie in the sky prediction, well, it could, the market cap could go up by 10 times or something. Oh, I would love that, because then that's quite a bit of money. Yeah, that would be very, very nice. Since inflation has taken hold so terribly, by the way, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that even in a boom and bust cycle, something like that could happen. Because, of course, the dollar today is worth half of what it was a couple of years ago. So, yeah, look at the old cap, look at the new one. You're talking about ballpark estimates, of course, but it could definitely rise a lot further. I like cryptocurrency, and the basic premise is good. And the main thing holding it back, in my opinion, again, not financial advice. I've got to make that disclaimer very clear for legal purposes. And the SEC is definitely listening in, of course, everyone. The main thing, in my opinion, holding it back is regulatory. It's fear of the SEC and stuff like that. So people don't want to branch out into actually using cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and others, for all of the possible applications because they keep getting sued. But when you get BlackRock in, or a similar monopolistic financial firm, are they going to get sued by the same people that enable them to maintain a de facto monopoly over elements of the U.S. economy? No? Well, then if you've got Bitcoin, my opinion is it's probably going to be rising steadily. I don't know that the highest suggestions that they're making, what was one suggestion was that it goes up 20 times or thereabouts. Maybe not. That would definitely be a lot. I mean, again, I'd be very happy if that were to happen. Even if it benefits BlackRock, it also benefits me. So, I'd still be able to afford a home maybe after BlackRock buys up the entire country. But I can get my pod. Most people won't be able to afford a pod by then because of Bidenomics anyway. Maybe not that high, but if it increased significantly, I wouldn't be that surprised. Again, my own personal opinion. I'm glad about the direction that it's going in, though. It's always great to have more money, even if, again, it is rapidly inflating and becoming less and less worth actually holding it all. Bessie Funk, Americans still languishing in Afghanistan, have a message for the Gaza hostages. Good luck. Yeah, a few people have been released. Unfortunately, most of them remain. By the way, please send no more super chats to the nearly 5,000 people watching, because at some point I have to go out and get food and do all the other things that I have to do. Apache, speaking of which, Asian massage parlors are in the same boat. Government says I can't get a happy ending from my Ling because they can't get a cut. Yeah, I mean, you know, someone gives you a wank for $50 or something like that, there's no way to criminalize it. They can bust the places. They don't always even succeed legally. So the fuck is the point of even bothering to police it? You know, there are murderers and rapists and people out there like that. I think that we should not go after the prostitutes and the drug users, and we should be going after the criminals that actually cause mayhem. Or maybe go after terrorists. You know, they failed to stop the Boston Marathon bomber, but they can raid you for having smoked a couple joints. It's kind of lopsided. Wow, not financial advice. Rumble stock at $5. Very, very low. Yeah, I've thought about buying in there, actually. Rumble's doing pretty well. YouTube, warmongers are the #1 clear and present danger. Yeah, you could save more people by outlawing warmongering than outlawing prostitution. Ozzy's robots converted my other coins other than Ether to Bitcoin. Yes, I still hold some Ethereum. On the fence whether I should bail on Ether or go all in on Bitcoin. Either advocates are convincing. Well, you probably got a lot more Bitcoin than I have. You have to consider it more as well, because you probably bought most of yours as an investment. Much of mine was donated to me as a form of donation, literally. Links in the description, by the way. If you're still bearish on Bitcoin and similar cryptos, I still do accept them and appreciate them. So I did invest some. I bought some internet computer at one point. I've still got that. And I bought some Bitcoin, but a lot of it was donated. So, I mean, the risk for me is lower if it goes to zero. So I'm not the average investor, because technically I didn't do any investing. I was getting tips, and it just happened to be in a non-fiat form. Wasted Bonehead, where's that retard sigil? I'm drunk and I need someone to take my anger out on. Trip Boom, if the cat keeps gassing, we're going to have to get Styx a gas mask. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I fed her a special salmon food yesterday. Maybe that didn't agree with her stomach. Let's see. I don't know if Sigil's here, actually. And a follow-up, Styx. Greta's octopus got evicted. Now we're roommates. He's a cool dude. Yes, you may have seen that story. Greta Thunberg getting dragged as an anti-Semite for having the autism octopus in the background in a gossip picture, a Free Palestine picture. And there were people that took it seriously. Like the ADL comes out and says, you know, she's being a Nazi. The octopus is a well-known anti-Semitic symbol. And I'm like, okay, yeah, if you're a history buff, you understand the usage of the octopus in propaganda. I'm not ignorant of this. I've seen it before. Number one, it doesn't always have to do with Jews. A lot of it's British or Catholics, actually. That's number one. Number two, do you think that the average fucker, whether they went to they can have a fucking master's degree, do you think the average person who graduates from school remembers the fact that the octopus is tied in with political and social propaganda? I don't think so. They can't even do long division. I think they forgot about that long ago. But the ADL and other groups were taking it seriously. And I was like, and then the worst part was there are people taking the ADL's bullshit seriously. I think Greta Thunberg is a NIMBYist and a craptivist and entirely self-serving. She's entirely attention-seeking, and I don't respect her at all. But I don't think that she hates Jews because of her literal autism octopus. Somebody posted the actual link to that particular fidget toy. It's literally like a fidget spinner sort of thing. And it's literally marketed for people with autism, which Greta Thunberg quite clearly and obviously self-evidently is. So I don't know. Again, she's getting her way. She got a lot of attention for it. Maybe she did know the octopus would be called anti-Semitic, and that's why she put it in the pictures to get more exposure, actually, and reposts it without the octopus in it. They had to do a redo. Anyway, I think that I'm going to go offline here. I had very much fun talking to nearly 5,000 people. I will be live again tomorrow, don't worry, with another slew of interesting news topics. Hopefully World War III won't have erupted at that point. That would be difficult. Definitely, though, I've got a couple of MREs still over here, so I can survive for a little while. I've even got a couple flameless ration heaters, so everyone else will have no electricity. We'll be enjoying a hot meal of, I can't remember what's in the Danish one. I think it's mainly muesli, so bon appetit. That's about all. Peace out.